Welcome back guys. In this video I'll be testing the new and improved LSFG version 3 on my Windows PC that has a Ryzen 5700X 3D processor and an RTX 2070 Super GPU. My monitor supports up to 240Hz refresh rate, so I'll be focusing on higher multiplayer modes in this video like X3 and X4. This update also adds an unlocked multiplier which is capped at X20. I'll be honest, beyond X4 mode, LSFG produces a lot of graphical artifacts. Image quality degrades significantly. Its developer claims that version 3 has better image quality, performance and latency than the previous version. I have already tested it on my ROG Ally. Was very impressed by the results of LSFG's X2 mode. It did an amazing job of improving the performance. Only some minor graphical artifacts were present and latency was manageable. In this video, I'll also highlight the impact of resolution scale. It can help in improving the performance with LSFG on. It processes input frames at a lower resolution and then outputs them at the original resolution. It does not reduce the size of the image, just reduces the amount of information available to LSFG for motion estimation. My monitor is Gsync compatible, so I'll enable Gsync. First I'll show you NVIDIA control panel settings. I am recording the video using my mobile phone instead of OBS. This will free up some hardware resources. Click on Manage 3D Settings, click on Global Settings, scroll down to there. From here, enable VSync. Now click on Setup Gsync. I have enabled the following settings. Enable Gsync compatible. Enable for full screen mode. Enable settings for the selected display model. I have also enabled Gsync indicator. Click on Display in the top left corner. Check this setting, Gsync compatible indicator. We'll use a custom afterburner overlay to show you the performance metrics. I'll apply a 60 FPS cap using RTSS. I'll be playing the games using my 8-bit Ultimate 2C controller. It's connected to my PC via 2.4 GHz wireless mode. First I'll show you LSFG settings. It's part of a paid application called Lossless Scaling that sells on Steam Store for around $7. Not using any of Lossless Scaling's upscaling algorithms. Frame generation, LSFG version 3 selected. Mode X2. Resolution scale 100% first. Clip cursor setting on. Sync mode default. Max frame latency 1. Won't be exceeding my display's max refresh rate value, that is 240. Gsync support on as my monitor supports it. Draw FPS setting on. Capture API TXGI. That's it. Settings. Hotkey for enabling LSFG, Control Alt and S. Start as administrator setting on. Minimize the application. First I'll be running Elden Ring. In-game settings, make sure screen mode is set to Portal S windowed, otherwise LSFG won't work properly. Resolution Full HD. I'm basically using the max settings with motion blur disabled. That's it. This game's FPS is capped at 60. Loaded shadow of RTX expansion. My current location, High Road Cross, big open area. Yeah, here we are getting a rock solid 60 FPS. Check out the input response. This is the game running without LSFG. GPU load is around 65 to 70%. We have more than enough free GPU resources for LSFG to work properly. I'll enable it now. Press its hotkey, Control Alt and S. Yeah, got enabled. You can see its FPS counter in the top left corner. FPS increased to around 120. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. GPU load increased to around 83%. Not observing any hitching. I'm observing some fuzzy textures around the character model when I move the camera in complete circles. These fuzzy textures are very difficult to observe when you move the camera at a normal speed like this. Latency is manageable. The best part of LSFG is you can use it with the game's online mode. A free FSR frame generation mod for this game exists, but in order to use that mod you need to disable the game's ESC. This means you won't be able to use the game's online mode. Game's HUD elements are not flickering. Now I'll enable LSFG's X3 mode. Open the application, unscale, X3, scale, go back to the game. It will try to increase the FPS from 60 to 180. Yeah, it's happening. Look at that smoothness. Okay, the fuzzy textures around the character model became more aggressive with X3 mode. As you increase the mode, graphical artifacts will become more aggressive, more noticeable. GPU load close to 90%. Now I'll switch to X4 mode. Base FPS may drop down to around 50 as we are almost hitting the GPU bottleneck. Open the app, unscale, X4, scale, back to the game. Yeah, the base FPS dropped to around 50. FPS is frame generation 200, but the artifacts around the character model are easily noticeable now, became more aggressive, so you get high FPS at the cost of image quality. Personally, I would recommend using X2 mode. Latency is still manageable. This is amazing. With the X2 mode, you'll get the least amount of graphical artifacts, as simple as that. GPU load is close to 90%. I'll engage in combat. A knight. Before engaging in combat, I'll just test the resolution scale mode. FPS dropped to around 47 here. Quickly open LSFG application. Resolution scale set to 25. Unscale, scale. The base FPS increased to around 53. Gained about 6 FPS. Oh no. Look at the fuzzy textures around our character model, even around torrent, even around Afterburner's overlay. I would not count Afterburner. It has issues even with some other mods. Not a big improvement in performance with resolution scale setting set to minimum, that is 25. So I'll just set it back to 100. Took out the knight. Beg your pardon, resolution scale setting did not affect the latency. Controls are still responsive. Resolution scale set to 100. I'll just test the X5 mode now. Custom 5. Apply a 48 FPS cap. Back to the game. The base FPS is around 45 FPS with frame generation 225. Look at the graphical artifacts around our character model and torrent. Alright. There is a strip of carbon textures around the bottom edge of the display. Not easy to observe this, especially on monitors that are big in size. But this strip of carbon textures is present in every game when using LSFG. Now I'll be testing the next game. Now I'll be running Resident Evil 4 Remake. No FSR3 frame generation mod exists for this game. I am using RE framework mod to enable DLSS upscaler. RE framework makes the text in the menu look a bit blurry. In game settings, I am basically using the prioritize graphics preset, Full HD resolution, 240Hz refresh rate. Unlock the FPS, display mode borderless window. Just set cinematic resolution to Full HD. FSR upscaler disabled. Disable a few more settings. Bloom off. Disable motion blur as well. Lens flare and distortion disabled as well. That's it. There's Leon. This is the game running without LSFG. Rock solid 60 FPS. Check out the input response. GPU load is around 40% only. Again, we have more than enough free GPU resources for LSFG to work properly. I want the best possible results. DLSS upscaler solves the texture shimmering issue present around the vegetation caused by FSR upscaler. Open LSFG. X2 mode, resolution scale 100. Back to the game. Your GPU load increased to around 70%. FPS increased to around 120. Oh no, the crosshair is flickering, see. I'm also observing some fuzzy textures around Leon's character model. Not easy to observe them, only occur when I move the camera in complete circles like this. But the ghosting around the crosshair is easily noticeable. And these artifacts will become more aggressive as I increase the multiplier mode. But the performance is very stable. Frame pacing a flat line. I'll just use the X3 mode now. Unscale X3. Scale. Back to the game. FPS increased to around 180. GPU load close to 80% now. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. Rather I should say extra added amount of smoothness. But look at the fuzzy textures around Leon's character model during fast visual motion. Crosshair. It's flickering. I'll use the X4 mode now. Unscale, X4, scale, back to the game. Oh my god, graphical artifacts have become more aggressive, especially around Leon's character model. FPS with frame generation 230 to 240, this is amazing. GPU load close to 80%. I'll just engage in combat, check out the FPS stability with LSFG on. Don't need to tweak the resolution scale setting as the game is not hitting the GPU bottleneck. 85% load. Excellent performance, so stable. If you don't move the camera around quickly, you won't observe a lot of graphical artifacts, especially the fuzzy textures around Leon's character model. Performance results are simply amazing. Now I'll be testing the next game. Now I'll be running GTA 4. I have installed DXVK and Fusion Fix mods. DXVK will make the game run in Vulkan mode, basically translate Direct3D9 API calls to Vulkan. It's not recommended to run this game at an FPS value higher than 60. It can break some missions. LSFG is ideal for boosting the game's performance. We'll see how it runs. In-game display settings, from here I have disabled motion blur. Graphics settings, resolution full HD, 240Hz refresh rate. Texture quality high, rest of the settings set to very high. View distance set to 25, detail distance 31, vehicle density 50, Gsync off, anti-aliasing SMA. That's it. Windowed borderless mode enable. These are Fusion Fix settings. There's Nico. Here we're getting a rock solid 60 FPS. GPU load is around 40% only. DXVK really helps a lot in improving the game's performance. If you use the default Direct3D9 mode, game will stutter from time to time even if you have a very powerful PC. Not ideal for a modern day PC. Vulkan is the newer and better API. Okay, now I'll enable LSFG. First I'll use its X2 mode. Resolution scale 100. Yeah, it's working. Check out the added amount of smoothness. FPS increased to around 120. Not observing any fuzzy textures around Nico's character model. I think his head is flickering. When I move the camera in complete circles, you should be able to observe this issue when you move the camera at a normal speed like this. Very good results with X2 mode. GPU load close to 40%. Latency is not a problem. Now I'll switch to X3 mode. Unscale X3, scale, back to the game. FPS increased to around 180. Can observe the extra added amount of smoothness. Okay, now I'm observing some fuzzy textures around Nico's character model. These fuzzy textures were not present when I was using X2 mode. Yeah, there is a strip of garbled textures around the bottom edge of the display. It's a small strip. May not be able to observe this. If you don't focus on it, observe it very carefully. GPU load is around 50%. Latency is still not a problem. Not bad at all. I'll switch to X4 mode. Unscale, X4, scale. Yeah, FPS increased to around 240. This is amazing. Camera became a bit floaty. Latency increased, but it's still manageable. Fuzzy textures around Nico's character model. Not bad at all. X2 mode was ideal. Even X3 mode was usable. You can use X4 mode if you can tolerate the graphical artifacts. I'll even test the X5 mode, why not? Fuzzy textures. Mode, custom, value 5, FPS cap 48. Base FPS locked at 48. FPS with frame generation close to 240. This is amazing. But look at those graphical artifacts around Nico's character model. Artifacts have become very aggressive, so wouldn't recommend this mode. Now I'll test the next game. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, 60 FPS cap. First I'll test the game with X2 mode. Resolution scale 100. In-game settings using the Ultra preset. DLSS upscaler enable using its quality preset. Motion blur off. Bloom disabled as well. I'll disable chromatic aberration and vignetting. That's it. Everything set to Ultra. Display, set it to borderless window mode, full HD resolution. Reflex on, Gsync off. There's Geralt standing at the entrance of Novigrad, getting a rock solid 60 FPS here. The game looks absolutely stunning. GPU load close to 50%. I'll enable LSFG now. Press its hotkey. FPS increased to 120. Check out that added amount of smoothness. A minor increase in latency. Nothing extreme. When I move the camera in complete circles, I can observe some ghosting around Geralt's swords. See? There is a strip of garbled textures on the bottom edge of the display. So minor graphical artifacts are present. I'll switch to X3 mode. GPU load 65%. Unscale, X3, scale. Yeah, it's working. FPS increased to 180. Look at that extra added amount of smoothness. But I'm also observing some fuzzy textures around Geralt's character model during fast visual motion. See, these fuzzy textures were not present when I was using the X2 mode. Ghosting around the swords became more aggressive. GPU load almost 80%. Switch to X4 mode. Unscale, X4, scale. Back to the game. Oh my god, camera is floating. 240 FPS. Ugly artifacts around Geralt's character model, but the HUD elements are not flickering. That's good to see. It's running very smoothly. Look at that strip of garbled textures around the bottom edge of the display. I'll just enter Novigrad. Check out the game's FPS, its stability. GPU load is close to 90%. Input delay is still manageable. So 10 by 10 when it comes to performance. Again, I would recommend using the X2 mode for Witcher 3. It's up to you. You can use X4 mode if you can tolerate the graphical artifacts. They're not easily noticeable when you move the camera at a normal speed like this. See? Last but not least, Red Dead Redemption 2. First I'll be running it using X2 mode. In-game graphics setting, resolution full HD, display mode borderless, reflex enable, Gsync and triple buffering disable, texture quality set to ultra, isotropic filtering 16 times, rest of the settings set to high, DLSS upscaler enable using its quality preset, API DX12. We are in this John, getting a rock solid 60 FPS here, GPU load 70%, equip my gun. No graphical artifacts, haven't enabled LSFG yet. I'll enable it now. Scale, yeah, it's working. FPS increased to around 0.20, GPU load close to 85%. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. Older versions of LSFG used to produce a graphical artifact in this game. Character model's head used to flicker. This issue is not present now. There are some fuzzy textures around the character model, very difficult to observe these fuzzy textures, especially when you are moving the camera at a normal speed like this. HUD elements are not flickering. Even the crosshair is not flickering. Good results in Red Dead Redemption 2. I'll switch to X3 mode. Mode X3. Scale. Back to the game. GPU load close to 90%. FPS 180. Yeah, the graphical artifacts around Marston have become more aggressive. It's the same story, but look at the added amount of smoothness. Amazing. Still not hitting the GPU bottleneck, so I'll switch to X4 mode. Okay, I'm observing some ghosting around the crosshair now. Very difficult to observe it. Mode XO. Scale. Back to the game. Your base FPS dropped to around 55. Ugly graphical artifacts around Marston's character model, even around the minimap. Latency increased as well, but it's manageable. FPS with frame generation close to 200. Time to conclude the video. LSFG did an amazing job when it comes to improving a game's performance. X2 mode had the best image quality and the lowest latency. It only produced some minor graphical artifacts during fast visual motion, like ghosting around our equipped items, some fuzzy textures around the character model, a strip of garbled textures around the bottom edge of the display. Higher multiplier modes like X3, X4 and X5 boosted the performance even further, but they caused the graphical artifacts to become more aggressive, especially the fuzzy textures around the character model. Version 3 really helps in reducing the GPU overhead for every multiplier mode of LSFG. The reduction in latency is also noticeable, especially in the X2 mode. It's an amazing application for games, especially the old ones. You can even use it with emulators, as you heard it right. Looking forward to seeing more such updates for LSFG. So that's it for the video guys. I hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.